A Raleigh police detective is on administrative leave and under investigation by RPD and the Wake County DA's office after a confidential informant he used provided fake evidence. That evidence helped Officer Omar Abdullah arrest 15 people on drug charges. WRAL's Joe Fisher talked with the mother of one of the defendants who says she has lost trust in the system.
So my son was locked up for almost 2 months.
Marcus Van Erven spent 8 weeks in jail from May to July, accused of trafficking heroin. But the charges have been dropped in his case and 14 others that involve substances provided by a confidential informant that lab tests determined were not drugs at all.
Raleigh Police Department came into my son's home. They trashed it. They cut holes up underneath the cushions like they were looking for something. They found no money. They found no drugs. They found nothing to indicate that Marcus was a part of some drug ring.
Mills says her son was kept in custody because of a video that allegedly showed him selling drugs. DA Lorrin Freeman says video provided by the informant was missing key parts of several drug sales.
And unfortunately, that information was relied upon in making charging decisions. Once that came to our attention, we worked to dismiss those charges.
Freeman's office is investigating the CI and if Officer Omar Abdullah, an 11-year veteran, knew about any of the shoddy evidence.
Certainly, we are concerned about it and believe that there is grounds for the confidential informant potentially to be charged criminally. And if we get additional information that leads us to believe that there's criminal involvement by Abdullah, then we'll take those appropriate steps.
Officer Abdullah was RPD's Employee of the Year in 2013. Despite that honor, Mills wants all of his previous arrests to be reviewed.
They're literally framing us. It's very disappointing because you expect the system to work when the reality is the system is doing what it's always done. It's broke and it's been broke.
Van Erven has no other recent charges and up until his arrest worked full-time in construction. Now he's looking for work, trying to get back on his feet to care for his 1-year-old son.
It messed up his finances. It messed up his job. It messed up his nerves. It messed up my nerves. Right. Somebody gonna answer for this.
I'm Joe Fisher, WRAL News.
Now, the Raleigh Police Department wouldn't comment on the case, but we have learned they are conducting an internal investigation into the officer's actions and these controlled drug buys.
A passionate discussion unfolded on criminal justice reform in Wake County tonight. Community members brought their questions and criticisms directly to the Wake County District Attorney. In one exchange, a mother demanded to know why an RPD detective hasn't been penalized. It's a case WRAL has also been following.
What you have is poverty criminalized.
Criminal Justice Reform Group Emancipate NC held a discussion tonight on how Wake County's system can improve. It started off with hypotheticals like whether cash bail should end or if sentences now considered excessive should be reduced.
Had my son behind bars, had my nerves tore up.
But the discussion quickly turned to Wake County District Attorney Lorrin Freeman and a current case one mother says proves the system is broken. Robin Mills is the mother of Marcus Van Erven. WRAL covered their story in 2020. He's one of 14 people arrested by RPD Detective Omar Abdullah based on false information from a confidential informant. Freeman told WRAL last year her office was investigating. Mills demanded an update.
I want to know, how is it that you don't think that you have to indict RPD?
As I have said before, this is an ongoing investigation and currently is a pending case.
Freeman said they're still investigating and could not say more. Emancipate NC's Don Blagrove noting this is why conversations have to continue.
The burden of that trauma that makes it necessary for us to have not just conversations, but solution-based conversations.
And DA Freeman did take every question from the audience. I watched that entire discussion. You can watch it as well. It's on Emancipate NC's Facebook page. They say they do plan to hold discussions on reforms in the future.
A confidential informant is now facing charges for turning over fake drug evidence to Raleigh police, which led to the arrests of 15 men, all of them black.
More than a year later, some are still questioning why the RPD detective involved in the case has not been charged too. WRAL's Joe Fisher is investigating what happened.
Some of the men arrested spent several months in jail accused of selling drugs that ultimately tested negative for any controlled substance. All of these cases involve Detective Omar Abdullah, who's been on paid administrative leave for more than a year.
I could not believe it. I couldn't believe it.
Robin Mills' son, Marcus Van Erven, spent 18 days in jail, one of 15 black men arrested for trafficking heroin that lab results later determined were not drugs at all.
It's disheartening on all levels to think that something like this can take place and there's no evidence.
The cases all involve Detective Omar Abdullah and confidential informant Dennis Williams Jr. The 27-year-old Williams now faces 5 counts of obstruction for providing false statements and a counterfeit substance falsely represented to be heroin.
What is the evidence that is presented to us?
Wake County DA Lorrin Freeman says Williams was charged in the midst of an ongoing investigation by the SBI that is also reviewing whether Detective Abdullah was aware of the fake evidence.
At this time, we have not had evidence that would support charges against Detective Abdullah or against the Raleigh Police Department. You know, that is not the same thing as saying, were there things that should have been done differently?
A civil suit filed against the city of Raleigh claims RPD officers occasionally conducted field tests on the drugs that came back negative, but officers failed to inform the district attorney or the court. Freeman declined to comment on the lawsuit, but says the case has led to changes in her office.
As soon as CCBI has, finished their lab analysis, they are now making direct contact with the head of our drug unit so that we can then review the case.
Has your office taken any steps to review previous cases by Officer Abdullah?
At this point, what we have done is take steps to look at previous cases using, this confidential informant. Certainly, at some point, if we believe that it's appropriate and have reason to believe that, his prior cases need to be reviewed, we will do that.
But at this point, no.
At this point, no.
The lawsuit claims Abdullah conspired with the informant to only target black males. Abdullah did not respond to multiple calls and messages from WRAL seeking comment. Mills wants Abdullah's cases reviewed to make sure no one is serving time for crimes they did not commit.
You telling me he got duped by a CI and he's a veteran office, not one, but over a dozen times.
And the civil lawsuit against the city of Raleigh goes to mediation next week. The city says it does not comment on pending cases. Meanwhile, Raleigh police is not commenting on the status of the internal investigation into how Detective Abdullah handled these cases. I'm Joe Fisher, WRAL News, Raleigh.
The city of Raleigh is going to pay $2 million for sending more than a dozen men to jail for crimes they did not commit. The settlement stems from a civil rights lawsuit claiming a confidential informant and a Raleigh police detective conspired to make the phony charges stick. WRAL's Joe Fisher is live outside RPD in downtown with more on the story. Joe?
David, this is the settlement here that involves 13 men wrongfully arrested, some of them cashing in on hundreds of thousands of dollars here. The criminal informant is already in jail, but so far, the Raleigh police detective has not been charged. Raleigh police say Detective Omar Abdullah has been on paid administrative leave for more than a year at a salary of $69,000. The $2 million will be split between 15 defendants, including 13 black men arrested for trafficking heroin that later tested negative for any controlled substance.
And I don't think there's any amount of money that can pay for trauma.
Robin Mills' son, Marcus Van Erven, spent 18 days in jail. His arrest, like the others, happened after a controlled drug buy involving confidential informant Dennis Williams Jr. Williams was indicted last month for turning over fake drugs to police.
There was a lot of media around this particular case, and I think they probably think that settling the case will make that noise quiet.
All of the arrests were made by Detective Omar Abdullah. The lawsuit against RPD claims Abdullah conspired with the informant to intentionally target only black males.
All of the officers involved and all of the CIs associated with all of the officers involved need all of their cases reopened and re-examined for fraud, period.
The lawsuit says RPD officers occasionally conducted field tests on the drugs that came back negative, but the men were arrested anyway. Now, the lawyer representing the wrongfully accused is asking RPD to make policy changes requiring the field testing of drugs, video recordings of the tests, and all undercover drug buys, and to stop using paid confidential informants. Even Wake County DA Lorrin Freeman says key parts of drug buy videos were missing in these cases that sent 15 innocent people to jail for a combined 2.5 years.
Why aren't we doing field testing on the spot? Why aren't they looking at the buy videos? It's so much wrong with how they do things. It's ridiculous.
And today, the city of Raleigh released a statement saying in part, quote, while the settlement resolves the lawsuit, it does not end efforts by the RPD to ensure this doesn't happen again. No one should ever be arrested based on fraudulent evidence. The State Bureau of Investigation is still looking into how these cases were handled. David, we have repeatedly reached out to Detective Omar Abdullah over the past week. We are still working to get his side of the story.
Joe Fisher live in Raleigh. Joe, thank you. Raleigh police have fired a detective following intense scrutiny over the handling of more than a dozen drug cases. This is an update to a WRAL News investigation. The detective, Omar Abdullah's firing, comes 1 month after the city paid out $2 million to 13 men wrongfully arrested. WRAL's Joe Fisher has followed this story for more than a year. Joins us live now with new information. Joe.
David, after spending more than a year on paid administrative leave, Detective Omar Abdullah is now off the force here at the Raleigh Police Department. We have been working for weeks to get his side of the story, and this morning when I reached him over the phone, he immediately hung up.
The drug evidence that put 15 black men behind bars later tested negative for any controlled substance. All 15 cases involved confidential informant Dennis Williams and Detective Omar Abdullah. The cases were ultimately dismissed. Now RPD has fired Abdullah for his role in the arrests.
And they need to answer for stealing people's freedom and threatening them.
Robin Mills' son, Marcus Van Erven, spent 18 days in jail. He's one of 13 defendants who settled with the city for $2 million after a civil lawsuit against 8 officers, including a police sergeant and lieutenant. The lawsuit claims Abdullah conspired with the informant to intentionally target only black males. The lawsuit also claims other officers were aware of Abdullah's scheme and failed to intervene to prevent these false arrests and wrongful incarcerations.
I think criminal charges need to be filed against all RPD officers who were actively involved and actively swept it under the rug.
Mills wants all of Abdullah's cases to be reviewed. She's also pushing for policy change, including a requirement all drugs be field tested and all drug buys be recorded.
Do the right thing and really look at the police department and ask yourself what needs to be done so that this never happens again. Change protocol.
And the confidential informant is the only person to be charged in this case so far. That being said, the State Bureau of Investigation is still looking into how these cases were handled, and charges could come for potentially officers in this case if the evidence is there, according to Wake County District Attorney Lorrin Freeman. We have confirmed with the Raleigh Police Union that they still represent Abdullah, and they will continue to do so until his appeals process is exhausted. David.
Joe Fisher reporting live. Joe, thanks.
New at 5, a Wake County judge denied the public release of police body camera video showing a Raleigh SWAT team raiding the wrong home during a drug investigation. Advocates for the families involved say they want Raleigh police to own up to their mistake. But the police department fought against releasing the video today and won. WRAL's Joe Fisher is live outside the Wake County Justice Center with how this ties into a major investigation that cost a police detective his job. Joe?
Gerald, the judge did deny that request to release this video to the public, but the judge granted a request to make 17 clips from this body camera video of this RPD SWAT raid available to the attorney representing the families. And tonight, that attorney tells me that he plans to file a civil lawsuit against the city of Raleigh in the coming weeks. In May 2020, RPD SWAT team armed with guns and a search warrant busted into this apartment on Burgundy Street, detaining a mother and her 3 children.
The entire family was terrified that they were about to be shot and killed.
Abraham Rupert Schul represents the Irving family. He says despite the warrant listing the family's correct address, a picture on the warrant did not match the home. And the suspect RPD was looking for never lived at the home. Today, Rupert Schul argued in court that the body camera video has compelling public interest.
Incidents like these are why we have body camera, so we can learn from this footage, so we can prevent incidents like this from occurring, and so we can think about important policy changes.
But Raleigh police objected.
We have a case where officers were acting on information that they had at the time based on information that was contained in a search warrant.
That search warrant is signed by former Detective Omar Abdullah, who was fired in October after a year-long investigation into the wrongful arrests of 15 men. Prosecutors say Abdullah used a confidential informant who turned over fake drug evidence to make those arrests. Back on Burgundy Street, advocates for the family say the body camera video would demonstrate how the use of confidential informants can impact innocent people.
And in order to have accountability, we must have full transparency on what transpired.
And Wake County District Attorney Lorrin Freeman told me today that the State Bureau of Investigation is still looking into those wrongful arrests to determine whether Detective Abdullah had any knowledge of those fake drugs before making those arrests. Back in September, the city of Raleigh agreed to pay out $2 million to 15 defendants, including 13 of those men wrongfully arrested. Gerald?
Joe Fisher live in Raleigh. Thank you, Joe.
A man is in jail for selling cocaine, and he wants his conviction overturned, claiming he was framed by a Raleigh police detective. It's the same detective fired by RPD last year after making more than a dozen bogus drug arrests. WRAL's Joe Fisher has been following this story for months now and joins us live at the Wake County Justice Center with the latest twist. Joe?
Deborah, this detective working with the same confidential informant arrested 15 men who were later released because the drugs that they thought were heroin were actually no controlled substance at all. There are several other suspects sitting in jail right now based off of information used by that same confidential informant. Wake County District Attorney Lorrin Freeman has agreed to review all of the cases involving this CI, but that review appears to be slow going. Just outside downtown Raleigh is where David Weaver was arrested 3.5 years ago after police say he sold cocaine to a confidential informant. He's been in jail ever since, claiming the cocaine was planted on him by a detective during a strip search after his arrest. The detective and informant involved are familiar names. Detective Omar Abdullah and CI Dennis Williams have since been linked to 15 bogus drug arrests that cost the detective his job and put the informant behind bars for turning over fake drugs. WRAL spoke to Wake County DA Lorrin Freeman in September. Has your office taken any steps to review previous cases by Officer Abdullah?
At this point, what we have done is take steps to look at previous cases using, this confidential informant.
But 5 months later, Freeman says the review is still ongoing, saying, quote, We are in the process of reviewing Mr. Weaver's case. It remains our intent to look at other cases involving this CI. We are in the process of trying to identify those cases with the assistance of RPD. This week, a judge ruled RPD must turn over the drug buy video to Weaver's attorney, who tells WRAL he plans to use the video to help overturn Weaver's conviction. And tonight we are hearing from David Weaver's family, his sister releasing a statement that we can pop up that reads in part, "The injustice in my brother's criminal case has been impacted our entire family negatively. It has been hurtful. Citizens of Raleigh expect for our police department and law enforcement to abide by the ethics, principles, moral standards, and values that they took an oath for." Weaver is scheduled to be released from jail this month, but his family is still focused on clearing his name altogether. I did reach out to Detective Abdullah along with his attorney. We have not heard back. Deborah.
We know you'll keep following this. Joe Fisher, live in Raleigh. Thank you, Joe.
Raleigh SWAT team raided the wrong home. Now families who lived through the ordeal are furious that the body camera footage of the incident will not be released.
A judge made that decision today, saying parts of the video will be given to the family's legal team. WRAL's Aaron Thomas joins us now live from the Wake County Justice Center after talking with the family. Aaron?
Deborah, Gerald, we got to look at this search warrant for ourselves. Now, this mother of three whose home was wrongfully raided, she says that the warrant shows the correct address, but police arrived at the wrong apartment. And apparently this is not the first time this has happened. Today we heard from a civil rights attorney who appeared here in court today. He says that he's looking into a similar case that happened in 2020.
So it's no closure. I mean, we're still traumatized behind this.
It's an experience Yolanda Irving wishes she didn't have to remember.
It was a traumatic incident, you know, with everything, you know, guns being drawn, us being thrown on the floor.
Irving says she and her three children were in their home back in May of 2020 when a SWAT team with Raleigh Police Department invaded their home on Burgundy Street without warning. She and a civil rights group called for the public release of body camera footage.
There's a compelling public interest in seeing these videos merely to see what the Irving family experienced when their home was raided.
But today, a Wake County Superior Court judge released parts of it, only to the legal team. An attorney representing Raleigh Police Department objected to the public release, stating this wasn't a critical incident resulting in injury or the loss of life.
But here we have a case where officers were acting on information that they had at the time based on information that was contained in a search warrant.
That search warrant is signed by former Detective Omar Abdullah. WRAL reported on his firing over the fall after a months-long investigation into bogus drug arrest based on bad information from a criminal informant. Kenya Walton, a next-door neighbor who also had her swarmed and searched the same night, wants accountability.
It's going to take something really, really, really wrong before they even consider those body cams being released.
Families say releasing body camera footage can be a learning lesson to prevent other people from experiencing what Irving went through.
We was violated, no questions. Like, it was no drugs, no money, no nothing in there.
New tonight, we're also hearing from the civil rights attorney. He shared this statement with me regarding today's ruling, which reads in part, "The judge has the power to reconsider his decision, and we hope he will. Additionally, the city council can also join in our petition for public release. In the interest of transparency and full accountability, we hope the mayor and city leaders will take that step and ask for release." At this time, we are still waiting to hear from Raleigh Police Department about today's ruling. Back to you.
Aaron Thomas, live in Raleigh. Thanks, Aaron. A man is in jail for selling cocaine, and he wants his conviction overturned, claiming he was framed by a Raleigh police detective. It's the same detective fired by RPD last year after making more than a dozen bogus drug arrests. WRAL's Joe Fisher has been following this story for months now and joins us live at the Wake County Justice Center with the latest twist. Joe?
Deborah, this detective working with the same confidential informant arrested 15 men who were later released because the drugs that they thought were heroin were actually no controlled substance at all. There are several other suspects sitting in jail right now based off of information used by that same confidential informant. Wake County District Attorney Lorrin Freeman has agreed to review all of the cases involving this CI, but that review appears to be slow going. Just outside downtown Raleigh is where David Weaver was arrested 3.5 years ago after police say he sold cocaine to a confidential informant. He's been in jail ever since, claiming the cocaine was planted on him by a detective during a strip search after his arrest. The detective and informant involved are familiar names. Detective Omar Abdullah and CI Dennis Williams have since been linked to 15 bogus drug arrests that cost the detective his job and put the informant behind bars for turning over fake drugs. WRAL spoke to Wake County DA Lorrin Freeman in September. Has your office taken any steps to review previous cases by Officer Abdullah?
At this point, what we have done is take steps to look at previous cases using, this confidential informant.
But 5 months later, Freeman says the review is still ongoing, saying, quote, "We are in the process of reviewing Mr. Weaver's case. It remains our intent to look at other cases involving this CI. We are in the process of trying to identify those cases with the assistance of RPD." This week, a judge ruled RPD must turn over the drug buy video to Weaver's attorney, who tells WRAL he plans to use the video to help overturn Weaver's conviction. And tonight we are hearing from David Weaver's family, his sister releasing a statement that we can pop up that reads in part, "The injustice in my brother's criminal case has been impacted our entire family negatively. It has been hurtful. Citizens of Raleigh expect for our police department and law enforcement to abide by the ethics, principles, moral standards, and values that they took an oath for." Weaver is scheduled to be released from jail this month, but his family is still focused on clearing his name altogether. I did reach out to Detective Abdullah along with his attorney. We have not heard back. Deborah.
We know you'll keep following this. Joe Fisher, live in Raleigh. Thank you, Joe.
WRAL News, coverage you can count on.
Now at 5:30, the use of no-knock warrants have become a hot-button issue surrounding policing in America. It's now at the center of a federal lawsuit against the Raleigh Police Department after a SWAT team raided the wrong apartment. Thanks for joining us. I'm Lena Tillett.
And I'm Dan Haggerty. WRAL's Joe Fisher talked with the city's police chief about these no-knock raids. He's live for us in Raleigh with a story that you'll only see here on WRAL. Joe?
Dan, Chief Stella Patterson has only been on the force here for 6 months. It's important that we say the incidents in question happened before her arrival. The chief tells me that RPD does not use no-knock warrants, but in reviewing state law, it is clear that officers can move in pretty quickly after announcing themselves.
Police search warrant! Police search warrant!
A Raleigh SWAT team busted into this home in April, less than 1 second after the first command.
Put your hands in the back of your head.
Officers had the wrong house. Civil rights advocates are now asking RPD to stop using so-called quick knock and no-knock warrants, in which officers never identify themselves. A new federal lawsuit against RPD claims officers gave no warning before raiding this apartment on Burgundy Street in May 2020, leaving an innocent mother and her kids feeling terrorized.
It was a traumatic incident, with everything, guns being drawn, us being thrown on the floor.
Again, RPD had the wrong home. Chief Stella Patterson did not comment on the lawsuit, but says department policy does not allow no-knock warrants.
I personally believe that is the best route to take. It's the safest for very favorable outcomes for our employees as well as those where we are serving warrants.
North Carolina's state law requires officers to identify themselves and the reason for being there, but the law does allow officers to enter by force if they believe admittance is being denied or unreasonably delayed. And officers don't have to knock at all if giving notice would endanger someone's life.
If you put some sort of a notice in there of 5 seconds, 3 seconds, 10 seconds,
you're taking the discretion away on the ground.
Attorney Daniel Meier says the law gives officers plenty of freedom about when to move in.
Sir, don't move. I'm going to have you out and she's going to grab the kids, okay?
A decision Chief Patterson says will be different every time.
Step back towards me.
There's a sense of reasonableness as well.
Do you think it's reasonable to, bust in 1 second after?
I think that it's reasonable to make sure that you knock, that you announce, and that there's some sense of, okay, that it's clear that you have announced yourself and that you've given an opportunity for somebody to at least be alerted. And that doesn't mean for them to get up and put their clothes on and come to the door, but they have been alerted.
And RPD has not commented on the federal lawsuit about that illegal search of an innocent family. However, an attorney for the police department said previously in court that officers at the time were going off of the information they had in a warrant that listed the wrong address. Dan?
You're asking important questions, though, Joe. Keep it up. Appreciate it. Reporting live for us downtown in Raleigh. Thank you.
Tonight, we're a step closer to learning what's next for a fired Raleigh detective linked to bogus drug deals. A grand jury indicted Omar Abdullah today, determining there's enough evidence to charge him with obstruction of justice.
But this comes after a lengthy investigation into Abdullah, who was accused of framing 23 people with fake heroin deals. WRAL's Aaron Thomas spoke with legal experts to determine what's next in this case. Aaron?
Gerald, this one local attorney tells me that this obstruction of justice charge is a low-level felony. So if Omar Abdullah were to be convicted, you're looking at just a few months of prison time and likely some probation time. We did learn today from the Wake County District Attorney that there will likely not be any additional charges filed. One mother of the accused says that she is not fully satisfied with this outcome.
There should be more outrage than what I'm seeing.
Frustration lingers on for Robin Mills, the mother of a wrongfully arrested man. Her son, one of at least 23 people arrested and jailed on drug trafficking charges. Today, a criminal case advanced against Omar Abdullah, the former Raleigh police detective whose informant planted fake drug evidence and helped put people in jail. Abdullah was fired from the department back in 2021.
A black man doing that to fellow black men, I have nothing for him. I could care less what happens to him.
Today, after a lengthy investigation, the Wake County District Attorney announced an indictment for a felony obstruction of justice charge. I asked Durham Attorney Daniel Meier what happens next in this case.
He's going to arrange to turn himself in, and they will have a predetermined bond or an unsecured bond. So he will have to be processed at the jail.
And if he's convicted?
Obstruction of justice is not a very high-level charge, so he's not facing years in prison, and in fact, probation is probably his likely outcome.
Robin Mills, highly critical of the handling of the investigation from the start.
And I am not impressed with the city of Raleigh. I'm disgusted with the city of Raleigh. I'm disgusted with RPD.
Now, Omar Abdullah is also tied to a federal lawsuit that alleges that the bogus drug investigation led to the excessive force and illegal raids of 10 black women and children. That mediation date is scheduled for August 15th. Gerald?
Aaron Thomas, live in Raleigh. Thank you.